My name is Ty Marlowe, and this is a presentation on my fieldwork of spring 2022. My fieldwork location was Cedar Ridge High School in Round Rock, Texas. This school teaches grades 9 through 12 and was founded in 2010, making it 12 years old. As of the 2020 to 2021 school year, the student population was 2,837, with a student-teacher ratio of 16.49. There are 5 art teachers at this school, and the art classes that are offered include Art 1, Drawing, Painting, Ceramics, and Digital Art. This school has a small art budget, but its teachers are dedicated and passionate. The classes that I observed included Art 1, Ceramics 1, Ceramics 2, and Ceramics 3. I spent a total of 34 hours observing these classes, starting in March and ending in May 2022. My duties included observing classes, interviewing students and my mentor, assisting instruction, and grading student work. The instructor that I worked with is Mr. Zachary Jackson. Mr. Jackson has a vast education in ceramics, working on theater sets, film and audio editing, and education. He currently has 12 years of teaching experience, and this includes public and private settings. Mr. Jackson runs a tight classroom, but has a great balance of structure and fostering of creativity. Mr. Jackson's classroom layout has materials strategically grouped. Materials that are needed every day are placed in the middle of student tables. These include items like paint and pencils. Materials like pottery wheels and palette paper that are not as common are located along the walls for easy access. Students interact socially and have autonomy of when and how quickly they complete their work. Mr. Jackson finds that giving students this autonomy leads to more success in the classroom. Safety concerns are addressed through the regulation of materials and the close observance of dangerous tools. Classroom procedures begin with a warm-up. This occurs over multiple days and follows the Feldman critique. The warm-up is a reproduction of a famous or popular work and starts with a historical lesson. Pictured at the top of this slide is an example of a warm-up. The students are copying the work Flower Cellar by Diego Rivera with pencil and watercolor. After the warm-up begins time to work on the main project. The timeline for the main project varies. For the first day of a unit, Mr. Jackson begins with a skill set lesson. Mr. Jackson pre-records videos of the instruction and plays them for the class while teaching alongside the video. Because of this technique, students can also watch the lesson from home if they miss a class. His instruction is pictured on the bottom left of this slide. After a skill set lesson begins the unit, students move on to sketching thumbnails, creating their final drawing, and then starting on the project. The project that Mr. Jackson's ceramic students are currently working on is based on the use of organic and geometric shapes. Pictured on the right side of this slide is one of these projects by Ceramics 3 student. Most of Mr. Jackson's assessment is formative. This includes observing students, working with them one-on-one, reiterating the lesson, which includes asking them questions, and keeping track of their progress. Mr. Jackson's summative assessment includes testing, worksheets, and projects. To the right is an example of one of his worksheets for an Art 1 class. This is a skill set lesson on variety and unity. Students are instructed to use the shapes provided and color of their choice to show variety and unity. The expectations of this worksheet are clear. Students can reference this at any point above their drawing. Grading is based on the achievements of these expectations. This student example shows 100% completion of the goals of the assignment. A topic that I found most interesting in my experience was grading diverse learners. Mr. Jackson taught me how to accurately analyze student growth. One of the biggest parts of this is getting to know your students. You have to take their individual progress into account when grading and assessing their work. Learning and performing difficulties must also be taken into account. This includes things like mental disorders, language barriers, and learning disabilities. To the right is an example of an interesting student worksheet. For this worksheet, students are instructed to copy the still life to the best of their ability. This student struggles with schizophrenia and has a lot of difficulty paying attention in class. She completed this worksheet with much more interpretation than observation. While she did not meet the requirements of the worksheet, her grading is adjusted based on her mental disorder and difficulty in class. Slide 8 shows some examples of student work in progress for various projects. These are all ceramic students. I'm especially impressed by their depiction of form. Slide 9 shows examples of completed student work. The use of color in all of these is very impressive. You can tell that these students understood that contrast in sculpture is shown through physical form. Mr. Jackson reiterates often how important positive and negative space is in sculpture. I've found that nature influence is an extremely common theme. I had the pleasure of spending so much time with Mr. Jackson and with the other art teachers at Cedar Ridge High School. I'm excited to take all of the advice that they gave me into my future profession. Mr. Jackson taught me that when creating projects, it's very important to pay attention to student interest. For example, painting and drawing projects are very popular because students find them more exciting. Watercolor and perspective projects are unpopular because they have a much higher technical difficulty. In high school, the way that students create changes. They've been used to using symbolic imagery for drawing, meaning, I know what an apple looks like, so I can draw an apple. At this age, a big part of their art education includes learning how to use observation. This is why Mr. Jackson uses the grid worksheet shown on slide 7. It helps students learn how to see shape and value instead of just an idea of what an object looks like. Mr. Jackson also told me to always keep important information in diligent files. I've learned that you have to have strong boundaries as an educator. You have to have limits of how much time and energy you spend working. You also have to have boundaries with student interactions. One of the most important pieces to success with your students is fostering their confidence. Always be sure to emphasize what students are doing right before any critique. This experience has made me more excited to be an educator and more prepared for my future career.